In May 2026, Rihanna posted a simple, short video on Instagram recapping her Met Gala look. It was just a piece of fabric and a cool song choice, but within 30 minutes, the internet didn't see it as a fashion recap. They saw a declaration of war. Suddenly, comment sections were swimming in a bloodbath of Stan Matrix. Rihanna just humbled Tyla. Ayra is the real queen of the continent. A completely imaginary war erupted overnight, pitting two of the brightest young African global music stars against each other over a simple background track. Meanwhile, in reality, they're just girls. They've partied together in Lagos. They probably still text each other. And they've historically been on interviews actively shouting from the rooftops that they are friends. But the internet doesn't care because a narrative had already been set in motion. One that felt deeply familiar, aggressively loud, and entirely orchestrated. Why is the world so desperate to make these two young women enemies, even when they are letting us know that they are friends and they are cool? This is a video analysis of how the music industry manufactures rivalry. Now, let's get into how the industry actually does this. So, we know that this is not an organic disagreement between two artists. Tyla and Ayra Starr have never had a fallout that we know of as the public, so there's no disagreement between the two artists. However, this is an industry blueprint. The music industry relies on and has in the past heavily relied on the scarcity myth when it comes to women. It relies on the scarcity myth and another principle called the Highlander principle, and this is something that we have seen play out for decades in the industry. So the music landscape has operated under this Highlander principle, especially for women, where it says that there can only be one. There can only be one superstar. There can only be one diva. There can only be one legend, female legend, that is. And this is something that we have seen play out over decades. We've seen Beyonce being compared to Rihanna, or Rihanna being compared to Beyonce. We've seen Taylor Swift and Katy Perry. We've seen Nicki Minaj and almost every new rap girl. And this is something that has been ongoing for decades. And it is something that is now seemingly there to stay, because we are seeing in the new generation of artists that women, female artists, are constantly being compared and pitted against each other, and it is seen as there has to be one queen amongst them. There has to be one superstar. We can't have two queens coexisting, okay? Now, I find this particularly interesting because somehow the music industry does allow numerous men to coexist within the same genre. Take, for instance, the genre of Afrobeats, since we are talking about Tyla and Ayra and both of them being artists from the continent of Africa. Even though they're not in the same genre, Tyla came from Amapiano and pop and R&B, a fusion of those sounds, and Ayra Starr comes from Afrobeats. Now, when we're flipping the script and looking at men who come from the genre of Afrobeats, such as Wizkid, Davido, and Burna Boy, all three of these gentlemen have literally, I'd say, they came up around the same time. Well, not exactly, but they've been dominating the genre along the same time. And we don't actually see any rivalry and animosity amongst them. Each and every one of them are individually celebrated for their art and for their contribution to bringing African music into the global landscape. And there's absolutely no rivalry between fans, and certainly no manufactured rivalry that is backed by the industry and the labels in order to boost streams. So, why is it that women are funneled into a single high stakes crown room? Why is it that there can only be one female artist who's dominating a genre? So, this is something that the industry has used as a tool in their arsenal. And now, recently, because of streaming softwares like Spotify and your iTunes and all these other platforms, there's a third element at play, and that is the consumer engine. And record labels use this to their benefit. So they know that when fans, or stans rather, have this idea and this notion that these two artists are rivals, they are going to drive maximum engagement on social media. And that maximum engagement that is happening on social media in turn feeds the algorithm, and the algorithm, sees all these think pieces and all these things, all this friction, and it boosts it, and even streaming platforms benefit from that engagement. And yeah, so that is how the industry has us by the scrotums, and keeps comparing, women against each other. So they very much use stan culture as their free, highly aggressive marketing team to drive numbers and push, artists' music and work. So that is how they do it, okay? Now I want us to look at how they actually do this, like in action, okay? So I want to have a breakdown in the pillars that the industry uses to pit women against each other, and I'll look at previous or historical incidents and draw links to what is happening right now with Tyla and Ayra Starr. Okay, so the first pillar I want to talk about is the historical blueprint. So this is the repetition or the loop that we keep seeing happening when women or female artists come up in the spotlight. Okay, so the first historical blueprint I want to talk about is in the R&B era in the early 2000s between Brandy and Monica. There was a whole lot of stories flying around. The two women were constantly pitted against each other, compared based on who has, the best vocal ability, who has the best album, who, looks the best, and things like that. And I remember there was also rumors flying around that at an awards show that Brandy and Monica were performing at, that backstage prior to their performance they had an argument, and Brandy got slapped by Monica because of the argument that they were having. It was that intense that they resorted to physical violence, basically. I remember that was flying around, and this fueled a whole lot of, I'd say, rivalry between fans as well, because the fans wanted to prove that, my artist is better than your artist. And the funny thing that these two did, and this is fully the idea of the labels, it's the industry, they literally forced Brandy and Monica to capitalize on their rivalry by doing their popular song, The Boy Is Mine. And they literally commodified on this. And now I feel like, now looking back on those times, like there's a lot of conversation that's had underground as well about whether or not the feud was genuine or if it was fake, just something to sell the streams. to sell their music, but it looks like the industry has had this template going on for such a long time that, in order for women to sell, we need to promote this rivalry between our artist and the other artist, just to to rouse up, the fans and boost the algorithm. And it's just something I don't understand. Okay. And the next example, our historical example I want to make is with Nicki Minaj. Nicki is just like Beyonce. She has the unfortunate honor of being compared to every new artist. Okay, so since she's in the rap category or genre, she's compared to a lot of, rap women who are coming up and, are rising to the charts in the rap genre. However, before I continue with this, I just want to make an observation. I feel like it's funny how Nicki Minaj is hardly ever compared to Doja Cat, and they are literally in the same genre, just that Doja is mixing, rap and pop, but essentially they are both rappers. I find it funny how she's never compared to Doja, and I feel like I know why, because Doja is equally as crazy as Nicki Minaj is, and I fear she might even be way crazier. Like, Doja is just one of those people you don't want to get into a feud with because she acts like she has nothing to lose. She's literally what do you call this? A troll. She's literally a troll. So yeah, I find that funny. But to get back on the video, Nicki Minaj has been compared to a whole lot of artists. I remember when Cardi B was coming up, she was compared to Nicki Minaj. People were saying, oh, is Cardi the newer Nicki Minaj and the better Nicki Minaj? And it also didn't help that they both had BBLs. So around the time that Cardi B came was when Nicki Minaj was like in her peak BBL body positivity movement, where she had recently just done, what's her song? Anaconda. So she was all about, showing and flaunting her body, and Cardi B came with a similar type of body and makes the same type of music. So they were compared and pitted against each other, and we all know how that one ended, or it hasn't even ended. It still goes on every now and again. But yeah, and then Megan Thee Stallion came up as well, and she was also compared to Nicki Minaj, and we all know how that one ended as well. Like, Nicki Minaj ended up making fun of Megan Thee Stallion's incident with Tory Lanez and things like that. And with the Nicki Minaj and Cardi B, the Nicki Minaj and Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion rivalry, I want to make a note that Nicki Minaj in these ones, like, it's rare that you see the artist or the bigger artist or older artist who the young one is being, or the new one is being compared to, responding, to these types of rivalries and wars. Nicki Minaj was responding to each and every single one of them. That's why they ended up being, it stopped being about the industry and the fans pitting these women against each other, and turned into Nicki Minaj was also actively playing a part in, pushing this rivalry narrative. And we all know that has significantly impacted the way that people view Nicki Minaj. Okay, people still love Nicki Minaj. Like, she's an icon. Her music is amazing. She created some of the best music, but we all know that this has put a dent on her image. Okay, so this is perhaps a lesson for the new girls to not engage in any of these rivalries that people try to push, and the industry also try to push on them as artists. Okay, so what we can see from these examples is how the labels and the media construct this either or binary choice for consumers, where you're either team A or team B, and there's absolutely nothing else. You can't say I'm neutral, because apparently that doesn't sell, albums, or that doesn't spark trending topics. So yeah, and then the next pillar I want to talk about is the global African wave. And here I want to talk about how the industry is basically weaponizing the fact that Tyla and Ayra Starr both come from Africa, and using that to fuel this rivalry that there's only space for one. We can't have two pop stars from Africa dominating the charts and running the industry or running the charts simultaneously at the same time. Okay, so they weaponizing the fact that these two women are coming from Africa, even though they are both, as I've mentioned before, in distinct different genres. Ayra being Afrobeats and venturing into pop, and then Tyla being an amapiano mixed with R&B and pop. It doesn't make sense to firstly compare these girls because their backgrounds are different, like they are in different genres. It doesn't make sense, but the industry has latched onto the fact that they are both coming from Africa and are using this to pit them against each other. And this creates a situation where instead of celebrating the expansion of African music into, the global stage, the global platform via these two distinct genres, amapiano and Afrobeats, the Western media and online stands have instead just flattened the art. They've just poured water on both Ayra Starr and Tyla's art, as they treat them as interchangeable competitors, which I don't understand why again, but they treat them as interchangeable competitors that are fighting for the single role of being an African export that is on global award stages. Yeah, and then the next thing that I want to talk about, the next pillar that I want to talk about is basically how the industry weaponizes fans to push this rivalry formula that they have going on. Okay, so the first thing that they use in weaponizing fans is having fans play the numbers game. Okay, so you constantly see this even on social media. If you are a person who's active on social media and happen to listen to Tyla and Ayra Starr and know of them and actively engage in posts about them, you will see that often fan pages, stan pages as well, they all do this thing where they sort of gamify stats. Like they will say that, oh, Ayra Starr's The Year I Turned 21 Billboard has charted number 15 on the Billboard 100, top 100 rather. And you would see someone else comment on that same post that, well, Tyla has won a Grammy. So the fans are actively engaging in this numbers game where they are trying to one up each other, that my artist has done A, B, C, and D, and oh, my artist has actually achieved A, B, C, and D. So yeah, and how they actually do this, like they have this engagement loop that I've noticed. Okay, so it firstly starts off by, I'll use TikTok for example. It first starts off by a fan making a minor comparison on TikTok, like, oh, Tyla's first album reached a peak of number 10 on the Billboard Hot 100 and has won a Grammy. And Ayra Starr, on the other hand, only one song from her album made Billboard Hot 100 and it peaked at number 5. And that minor comparison that people make, it triggers a whole lot of chain reaction. So you'll see that post, the comments will have people who are angry and, saying things such as, don't compare Ayra to Tyla, Ayra Starr is greater than Tyla, bigger than Tyla, why would you do that? Or the opposite of that. And by people engaging in comments, being angry and commenting angrily on those posts, the algorithm sees it and takes it as, oh, this is actually engaging, so let me post it. And then the next stage happens when the algorithm boosts this. Media blogs pick up on it. They're like, oh, okay, so this is trending. People are saying this about Tyla and Ayra Starr, and Next thing you know, Tyla or Ayra Starr goes to an award show and there's an interview there and they're being asked, so how do you feel about Tyla winning a Grammy and over you? Or how do you feel about Rihanna playing a song, Ayra Starr's song, while she ignored you the previous day, So the media picks up on it and then asks these inflammatory and provocative questions to actually rouse the internet, because those questions are not for the artists. They know that the artists are probably not even going to answer them or just going to have a media trained template answer, that gives them nothing. But they ask those questions to rouse up the fans, to have the conversation going more and more. And then lastly, the last thing we see in this stage is that the artists now get into a defensive loop where, they just don't want to engage in this, or they will release statements that, oh guys, no, that's not what's happening. Like what we saw with Tyler being like, okay, no, Rihanna wasn't being mean to me. I just didn't want to approach her because I could see that it was not the right time, right? And in all of this, while the artists are they're trying to do this damage control, like Ayra Starr on that one interview when people asked her about Tyla, and she's like, no, me and Tyla are cool. That's my girl. That's my home girl, okay? The artists are stuck in a defensive loop trying to calm this fire or these fires that the labels have started. And on the other hand, the labels are quietly cashing in the checks from these streams that are now surging as a result of people having these conversations and fans being like, okay, since you guys have started talking about our artists and their music streams, we are going to mass stream their music and their songs just to prove you guys wrong. So the labels win in the end. Okay, so without making this video any longer than it is, I want to conclude this. Okay, so what is the takeaway of all of this? What is the point of this video? And yeah, what I want to say is that the only way to overcome this, the only way that women can get out of this red race and this forced rivalry that the industry backs, okay? The industry backs, and sometimes the record labels are the ones who start these rivalries out of no way. So the only way to get out of it is by either having, number one, direct refusal. So the power that modern artists have is to actually not play into that. And we've seen, for example, Ayra Starr, both Ayra Starr and Tyla, especially when they were newer in the global, industry, I'd say from maybe 2023, 2024, they both were addressing, this rivalry that people were pinning on them. Ayra Starr on BBC Radio 1 Extra interview directly stated that, Tyla is my homegirl, that's my G. Okay, so let's not make any more noise, let's just make music. There's no need for comparisons. That's what she said. And Tyla, on the other hand, has also said that, you know what, Ayra is my girl, that's my homegirl, there's no beef here, there's no reason to compare. So that is the first step to all of this, okay? The artists themselves deciding that we're not gonna entertain this, we're not gonna play into these comparisons. And I feel like someone else who's successfully done that was Mariah Carey. I remember when J-Lo came up as well and Mariah was very new in the industry, people somehow compared the two of them. And looking back now, I actually even don't understand why they would compare Mariah Carey or J-Lo to Mariah Carey. But what Mariah would do would literally basically be like, oh no, I don't know her. But that was shady. But the artists nowadays should just learn to deflect. Like, no, that's my homegirl. That's my homegirl. We're not going to do that. That's my homegirl because there's more seats at the table. Okay? And finally, I want to say that the real threat to the old music industry's way of operating, which is pinning women against each other, isn't, one woman taking the crown from another, or one woman being the best artist of the decade over the other woman, okay? We're not voting or pushing for Ayra to win over Tyla or for Tyla to win over Ayra. what we are pushing for, what I am pushing for, is for basically women to refuse to play this game entirely. I just want Tyla and Ayra to just be strong and be big, big brands together and coexist together the same way that men are able to coexist. The same way that Burna Boy, Wizkid, and Davido are able to coexist and dominate the Afrobeats industry without any comparisons. I want that for Tyla and Ayra Starr. And it's even worse that they're not even in the same genre. So I genuinely just want them to not play into this. And I feel like one person that does this very well, she's not being compared to people I've not seen. Let me say I've not seen anyone comparing Thames to someone else. Okay, and I feel like that's a very good thing. That's a very good thing, and I like that. So I genuinely wish that the artists could ignore it, and I wish that at some point we as the consumers of their music could get to a point where we stop pinning these two artists against one another and stop creating beefs where there is none, because they both have respect for one another. And prior the industry, they were tight. They were very, very close. So it would be sad to see the industry pinning them against each other to the extent that they actually end up eventually having beef with one another. Okay, so the next time, I want to leave you with this, but the next time you see a thread telling you to pick a side or picking these two young women against each other, it doesn't even have to be just Ayra and Tyla. It can be another set of young artists. The minute you see a thread pitting them against each other, I want you to realize that you are just executing a marketing strategy that is designed to keep them divided. You do not have to choose. You do not have to pick a side. You do not have to pick a favorite artist. You can just listen. Listen to the both of them if you want. If you don't, listen to one of them, but don't engage in the narrative that one artist is bigger than the other, better than the other, and all those things. Okay? That is what I want to say. If you've reached this point in the video, thank you so much. Please do leave a comment in the comment section down below and tell me what you think about this. And yeah, please do give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel for more videos like this. And I'll see you on the next one. For now, it's goodbye.